how to replace the rear brake pads and rotors on your Chevy Impala. I am Stephen Wimberley, and this is Working with Wimberley. The first step is to remove the two 13mm bolts from the caliper. So I'm going to do that now with my 13mm socket and ratchet. So with the two caliper bolts out, the next step is to use a pry bar and pry out the caliper. And just take the caliper and set it out of the way on top of the control arm. Usually I would take out the brake pads next, but these are pretty rusty. They're not sliding very well. I'm going to take out the two 18mm bolts from the caliper bracket and remove the bracket with the brake pads in them at the same time. I'm going to use an 18mm socket in the breaker bar to loosen the bolts first. And then I'm going to use the 18mm socket and ratchet to remove the bolts the rest of the way. After you remove the two bracket bolts, you can remove the caliper bracket with the brake pad still in it. So with the caliper out of the way and the bracket off, the next step is to remove the brake rotor. And before we can do that, we need to remove the screw, and it is a T27 torque screw. So with the screw out, we should be able to slide off the rotor. So I have the brake caliper bracket with the pad still in it, so I'm just going to knock them out with the hammer gently. So the rear brake caliper uses a twist-in style piston. So I'm going to have to twist it in using my caliper tool on an extension with my socket. So after twisting the piston back into the brake caliper, the next thing that we're going to do is install the rotor with the T27 screw. So with the rotor and screw installed, we can go to our next step, which is reinstalling the caliper bracket. So reinstall the caliper bracket and thread in the bolts by hand. Next, use the 18mm socket and ratchet to tighten the bolts. Make sure the bolts are on very tight. The next step is to install the brake pads. We're going to put the brake pad with the wear markers on the piston side of the caliper. So now I'm just going to put a little bit of caliper grease on the back of the brake pads to help prevent squeaking. The next step is to slide the caliper back on. And thread in the 13mm bolts by hand. Use a 13mm socket and ratchet to tighten the bolts. Make sure to pump the brakes before driving, and this job is done. If you found this video helpful, be sure to subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and leave a comment. God bless you all.